Hi, I'm Justine, and I'm here to tell you being mentally ill isn't the end of the world. I know what it's like to live with a mental illness. It's hard. You're constantly trying to hide your struggles from others, and you feel like you're weaker than others because of your illness. But that's not true. So many badasses struggle with mental illnesses, but they don't talk about them because they're afraid of being judged or thought of as weak minded. Well, guess what? They're not. We can change that by talking openly about our struggles and sharing our stories with each other in a positive light. This is why I created Mentally a Badass, so we can come together as badasses who are also mentally ill or who's had it rough in life and share our stories with one another in a safe place that celebrates our strengths rather than shames our weaknesses. I hope this podcast helps you feel less alone in this crazy life of ours, and I hope it makes your life just a little bit better. In today's episode, we sat down with Brittany, who is a CBD advocate for mental health treatment. If you're someone who struggles with anxiety, stress, depression, or even sleep and is debating on using CBD as an alternative route for treatment, this is the episode for you. So sit down, relax, and enjoy the wisdom that we're going to receive from Brittany. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and I have one of my good friends, Brittany, here to talk about CBD, anxiety, postpartum depression. We have a lot of great topics that we're going to chat about. So thank you so much for taking your time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So just like in every episode of Mentally a Badass, we're going to go deep into your past because we like to be invasive. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I just felt like I had to throw a joke in there. Okay, all right. So you told me that, you've always experienced anxiety, which is one of the reasons why you are using CBD, and then also that does contribute to, postpartum depression. People who usually experience that usually do have like pre-existing mental health conditions. So do you feel that there's something that stems from your childhood that may have caused you to have an anxious mind?
It's really funny. I've been in therapy in and out like my entire life. The first time I remember being anxious, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, and it was like this fear. Like my parents went out to dinner, like a normal thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really know what prompted it, but all of a sudden I had this irrational, like this fear that like they weren't going to come home. Like I was afraid like they were going to walk into the street, get hit by a car. So I had to like call the restaurant and like hear their voice. And it was like, ever since then, I would just have that like what if kind of spiral, like that anxious people with anxiety tend to deal with. And
Mm-hmm.
so starting at like, I want to say like 10 or 11 years old, I went to like I guess like a child therapist, or they had like this, if you are somebody who's been when you're younger, it's like they have like a sandbox and they have like
Mm-hmm.
toys and you like mess around. And then basically I was in therapy in kind of in and out from when I was like, yeah, again, like 10 years old all the way through, I feel like the beginning of college, and took a break again until I found a therapist I really loved at like the age of 30. And I've been with her ever since.
So typically when a child like fears like, oh, this can happen, it's kind of like stems from like abandonment issues. Would you agree with that?
I, it's funny, like it could happen, I guess. I never had a specific instance or like, or as when I worked with therapists, like we haven't like pinpointed like an exact moment where like I was actually physically abandoned. But yeah, it's really weird how like as little kids we manifest it in like for so many different ways, and just the way we interpret certain things.
Yeah, I believe abandonment is not fully like physical. What I'm saying is that it can also stem from like emotional.
Oh
But
yeah,
then you
totally.
may not have like realized it as a child. It's always like subconsciously.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Like something got internalized, and that
Mm-hmm.
there was like this fear that like I somehow in my mind, my science brain, like as a kid, I needed that reassurance that like with
Mm-hmm.
evidence that like things were going to be okay. And for whatever reason,
Uh-huh.
it didn't get fulfilled, and not
Uh-huh.
a negative thing on like parents or
Yeah.
lack of trying, but something I
Yeah.
uncovered in therapy about it was like you just needed someone to like show you
Uh-huh.
like that it was gonna like, that no, like we know how to like cross the street. Like, of course we're gonna
Yeah.
come home and things like
Yeah.
that. And for whatever reason,
Yeah.
it just the message didn't get conveyed. And so my brain just got this like core belief issue with it. Like worrying that like bad things were gonna happen.
Yeah, it also could be maybe if you, let's say, I feel like I'm kind of having like a therapy session with you right now. I think it's just because I'm very like when people talk to me about this stuff, I get so intrigued and like always feel like I'm not trying to diagnose you. I'm not in that position. I was thinking like maybe there was a time you were like watching TV, or maybe like you weren't watching TV, maybe you're in your room or something like coloring, and maybe you heard like your subconscious brain heard, oh, these people got into a car accident.
Right.
So
Right.
I kind of
Exactly.
think like because I'm a firm believer that everything like is for a reason. It's
Yeah.
so even but it's like not everyone can really fully like undercover that. So like saying if I usually like I said, usually my guess I'm not like, oh, let me try to like I literally never have conversations like this. I just think that I just like when I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm like, I really have a feeling that usually I mean anybody would fear if their parents don't come home with their kids. That's I just feel like because you know your parents are your caretakers, the people that you look up to and such. But yeah, maybe who knows, maybe you were like listen your subconscious was listening to the news. Maybe the
Yeah,
news were
right, exactly. Just saw
maybe
something, like saw something, heard something from older kid, like,
yeah,
and
maybe in school or like because I feel like
I
now
mean,
we're
it's
older, we
so
don't
weird. It's yeah, it's so weird, and that's like my therapist and I have talked about it a bunch. It's like she's like, I wish it was like this clear cut, like this is like the date and time, like that could like be the root cause of all of this, but usually that's just not how it works. Just for some reason it just gets triggered, and then it just like somehow kind of builds over the years. And so then my brain kind of it would go to this place. So then if I didn't know something, I would expect that the worst happened instead of just being like, oh, I just don't know what's going to happen. So instead of it just being a neutral, like, I don't know what's going to happen, it could be positive, it could be negative. I
Mhm.
would always jump to like worst case scenario.
Yeah, and that typically, of course, does happen with, you know, anxiety disorders. Does
Yeah.
anxiety disorders run in your family?
Not that I'm aware of, but I definitely know that like people are like anxious in my family. So like I definitely remember like, hearing like like it would probably also my dad was a personal injury attorney. And so I would hear
Uh-huh.
all his stories about like all like the crazy
Oh,
accidents,
I think we're starting to get to something here.
right?
I love how I'm like, I would like just kind of getting you like thinking for certain things. I'm just like maybe the reason I never became a therapist just because I feel like I end up crying with with the patient, but I just
Yeah.
like feel like I'm just like the kind of person where my mind is like oh, there's more to it or something like that. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, I realized I was joking in the beginning, but I was kind of acting invasive in a way that I wasn't intending to. Um, but yeah, no, if he was like a personal injury person, you're hearing like all like, you know, negative things, some people getting hurt.
Yeah. I know, right?
Oh,
It's like
I
who would
think
have
we
thought that maybe I would assume like I'd start my undeveloped brain would like make these like connections
yeah,
about
yeah.
or
It's because
something.
when you're a kid, you don't like think how you're thinking right now.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, so that's why I love to have an open conversation about someone's childhood before we talk about, you know, the topic that you want to speak about today, is because it's just it's mind blowing. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, I think we kind of like got it here. So, today, do you still have like that same like thought process? Like, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking? Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I still will deal with like probably anxiety or anxious
Mhm,
thoughts, I
yeah.
should say,
Yeah.
like my whole life,
Mhm.
but I'm like in a much better place. Not just because, yeah, like CBD has helped me in the last year or so, but
Mhm.
because I've made such huge, like I've been with the same therapist for like 6 years. And so
Mhm.
we've made like a ton of work. And actually, I started doing EMDR therapy, which I always say this wrong. It's like eye movement, I think
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. It's eye
yeah. And so when we
movement,
started doing that, I started
something.
having
Yeah,
like some really big, like click, like, oh my God moments, like seeing all these connections. And it just like
yeah,
really, it just, working on those core beliefs that like we have. And like, it's been like a slow process. Keep like peeling the onion. I feel like another layer. And it like,
yeah.
it's been so helpful.
That's exactly like kind of how it works. It also really makes me think of that movie Inside Out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, literally, I'm obsessed with that movie just because it's literally psychology. Like it
I
explains
know.
psychology to a kid,
I know. And it's
which
so
is
true with the emotions. And it's just, And like one of my big things is like for me, like I was always like a crier. So like I didn't
Mhm.
get angry, I would just cry. And
Mhm.
so like learning then is like so I just like for whatever reason, I never learned how to be angry when I was little. Like I for some reason would default to crying. And then as an
Mhm.
adult now, like through therapy and everything, I'm realizing like, oh, I can like have all these emotions and they're all fine. And like I will come back to normal. Like if you just give me the time. And so like learning now it's like I have these weird like self-awareness now. I can just like look like give me an hour. Like I will be okay. Like it's okay. Like let me cry for 15 minutes. Like,
Oh, wow, that's so nice. I feel like I used to be a crier. Now I'm just like I get angry more often. I feel like I'd rather be a crier.
but like I get angry too now,
Yeah,
thankfully.
yeah, we're
Like,
human,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. But now I know what to do with it. Like I think
Yeah.
when we're little, we just don't know. Like we develop our whatever defense coping mechanisms, then we get stuck in them, and then it's like
Do you know that wait, how old's your child right now?
almost 18 months.
Oh, okay, okay. And so we're not in the are we in the toddler phase
Technically, toddler.
soon? Like
Depends who you
starting
ask. She's a
soon?
toddler. I call
Okay,
her a
she like
toddler.
walking and everything.
Oh yeah, she's like running around.
Okay, it's awesome. I don't think I've seen, have you seen pictures recently? I don't
You
know.
know what? I don't share a lot of pictures on my my public Instagram of
Uh-huh.
her. Like I'll pop her in my stories every once in a while, but
Yeah.
on my feed, I don't really have her.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. That makes sense. I was gonna say something. So when I was in New Jersey, I was like taking care of a toddler, and she had like a lot of anger in her, like a lot of like hitting and
Yeah.
screaming and such. And so I was like, you know what? Let me give her like this stuffed animal, and I'm like, this can be your designated stuffed animal. So whenever you're angry, just like take out your anger on the stuffed animal. So you rather like do that than like hit somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
For those 2 weeks that I was taking care of a toddler, all my Facebook ads were like stuff for kids. Like I was like a mother for those 2 weeks. So anyway, so I Googled like stuff for like anger management and like emotional regulation, things like that. Like you make like a corner in your house and it has like all these like certain toys for like emotions and such. So instead
Interesting.
of like if your like kid is like having a tantrum or whatever, you don't like punish them,
Yeah.
you bring them to that corner so they can learn how to like handle those emotions. And I'm like, I literally was like looking at this, I'm like, that's so smart because
Yeah.
it's true. I'm just like lately I've just been I don't have kids, but like I've just been so big on like learning things like that just because I'm like, and I'm sure you are too, you're a new mother and everything, that you're a big believer that, everything starts at your childhood. So
Hmm.
it's really like how discipline kids or take care of your kids and just like things like that. It's like matters to like for them to become an amazing person of society. So I've just been like so into that whole like psychology of children and all that. So
I
it was
know.
just,
So
yeah.
yeah, so there's this one woman I think she's called Big, I think it's like Big Little Feelings on Instagram. And she has
Oh, that's
all
a
these
cute
tips
name.
like about like dealing with toddlers and kids, like how to handle like when it's like, when your kid's having a tantrum, like no, like you didn't do anything wrong. Like, yes.
Yeah.
And part of it's like their brain is developing so fast and they just
Yes.
don't know how, like they can't express it. And so it comes out in like crying or screaming or
Or
whatever. And
stomping.
like, and they're like,
Yeah.
remember, like if you're upset, like you're not in a
Yeah.
headspace to learn
Yeah.
how to act better. You have to like calm down. So it's the same thing with like, your kid. You have to like let them know that you're support, like I'm here for you. I know you're upset right now. And like it's okay to be
Yeah.
upset. And then
Yeah.
it's like, then when they're calm, then you can have the conversation.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, it definitely does. I feel like, back in the days, I mean, I don't know how you were brought up and whatever, but before I keep, I feel like I'm kind of getting a little bit off topic. So I want to kind of like go back to your anxiety. Did you take medication that's not CBD?
Yeah,
Right.
so when the first time I took medication, I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
It's my pediatrician shifted gears more towards, I guess, I don't know if it was like more psychiatric in terms of like treating kids. And so I remember I'd always been anxious. I didn't really know what was wrong. They didn't really, I feel like in the 90s, they didn't really, it wasn't as talked about as much. There wasn't as much support, I think, for like
Mm-hmm.
mental health. And definitely not like people didn't talk about it in schools and things
There weren't
like
like podcasts like this that would be like, let me
yeah,
listen in, let me just see what they
exactly.
gotta say.
Yeah. And I remember I like went to his office, I took like a test and he was like, okay, it's like, the reason you feel anxious, like your serotonin levels are like depleted. And it's
Mhm.
like you have lower serotonin levels in your brain. So that like what we need to, we could give you something, it's going to help balance those. You shouldn't feel as anxious. And so as like a 12 or 13-year old, my biggest thing was I would have a hard time sleeping over at friend's house. And if you remember like middle school, like having sleepovers is like the biggest thing. And
Yes.
so my big thing was I'd be at my friend's house, I'd be fine, having fun, then time to go to bed. And
Mhm.
then like if I didn't fall asleep first, I would then get anxious and get worried. If I can't sleep, that meant I was gonna get sick. Then oh my God, if I get sick, then I'm not gonna be able to sleep. And it was like this crazy cycle. So a lot of times I'd have to end up calling my parents at like midnight, like come pick me up from my friend's house.
Okay.
And so this happened a lot. And so I met with my doctor and then he's like, okay, we're gonna try this medication. And so I tried it and it did help. I was actually able to like go with my friend and her dad to like Hawaii for a week, which was which was great. But I remember I was like, like therapy helped me a lot. I'm like, I'd rather just not be on medication if I don't have to be.
Mhm.
And so I remember when I had to taper off of the medication, I didn't like it
Mhm.
because it was such a strong, like, I think I had skipped, like, I like missed a dose and I got a horrific headache and it like freaked me out. And I was like, I don't want to mess with my brain chemistry if I don't have to. And so then I didn't take anything again until I was in college. They put me on, I think they put me on Zoloft or something for like a couple months. And I remember like I didn't feel like a huge difference in like my mood. I saw a therapist. We didn't have a great relationship. I like, as you know, if you don't have a good relationship with your therapist, it doesn't work well for either
Yeah.
person. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so after a couple months, I was like, I stopped taking it because I felt like it wasn't doing anything. So I've had medications on and off, but for me, therapy always was like the ticket that helped me with my anxiety. And I maybe because my anxiety wasn't like at the full like general like AD diagnosis, so like maybe I didn't have the level so low that they needed the biochemistry help. But yeah, for me, it just didn't work that great.
So that particular doctor that you're referring to when you were 13, when he said your serotonin levels are low, that's
Yeah.
what he said, right? How did
Yeah.
he know that?
So this is the funniest thing, and it's like I don't remember getting like a blood draw. I swear I
Yeah.
took like a written test, and maybe it was his just way. Maybe I answered questions which put me into an anxiety category, which then he just was like trying to explain it to me in that way. Because I was like, this is like so funny. I literally had this conversation with my current therapist recently. I was like, how did he like
How would
measure
he
it?
know
Or didn't he
that? It's
measure it?
like,
So
yeah,
like,
that's what I was gonna ask him. Like, do you do some type of like scientific test on you and see like your levels of
I my guess is that I feel like maybe children pharmacology must have just been like this was like the year like not even 2000 like.
Mhm.
And
I
so
also
maybe it was like the beginning. And so they were learning that, like, oh, for some kids who have anxiety, it means they have low serotonin. So you can give
uh,
medication. And so maybe
it's
he
kind
was
of
just
like
like,
textbook stuff, yeah.
yeah, like connecting the dots or something.
Yeah, yeah, because I think lately what's been really spoken about a lot on TikTok and from like other that are not just like psychiatrists that are like other doctors is like hormones.
Yeah.
Like if your hormones are imbalanced, it can mess with your brain chemistry, and
Yeah.
that's 100% true, and it has a lot to do with what you eat as well. So maybe because I was thinking like because a lot of times I usually I don't hear that teenagers are on like medication until they're like 16 when their brain's a little bit more
Hmm.
developed. So I think
Hmm.
you're like the first person that I know that was on medication at that young of age.
Yeah.
Because usually they try to like because like I started going to therapy when I was 15.
Hmm.
And I think when I was that age, I was like, oh yeah, I want to be on meds because I was just like,
Hmm.
I don't want to be dealing with this. But I think the therapist was like, they didn't want to put me on medication they felt like was absolutely like needed just
Yeah.
because when you're a teenager you're still literally growing
Yeah.
your brain. So yeah, so that yeah, you're like the first person I know that was like, I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's
And
other people too, but
I think it was, I don't even think I took it a year, maybe a year. It was very short lived. And then I was like, I feel fine. I don't need this anymore. And so then I
oh,
was like,
that's like the most common thing we all
I
say like after
know.
like
Yeah, but I just remember, yeah, I want to go off of this. I don't want to be on it anymore. And so my mom was like, okay, so I'll talk to the doctor about how to like, taper off medication. I remember tapering off, and I was like, I hate this process. Never want to do this again.
oh no, yeah, it's horrible. Oh my gosh, when I had to like go off my bipolar meds it was like Ugh, not fun.
Yeah, and then like, I remember yeah, I remember like in I guess it was after college when I found other therapists. Like I've moved around quite a bit. So like I moved locations, like find new
Mm.
therapists.
Yeah.
And I remember like making these, like really connecting with like the person and like feeling they really actually asked me like questions that were like really probing at the correct things in a good way and didn't feel like too intrusive or didn't feel cruel. I feel like I've met with therapists before where it's like the way almost like condescending sometimes when they hear about your stories. Um, but then like once I found somebody, I'm making all this headway. And I was like, wow, I'm like, I feel like so much better equipped. And I'm like, and I don't need I didn't have any medication involved. So I was like, this is
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I always like feel like, there I feel like I put my personal opinion too much in this, but I always like the way I think about medications, like I believe in them when you absolutely, absolutely like need it.
Yes.
When there's really like no other choice and you are like in the dump, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like medication can truly like save somebody. So you mentioned you had postpartum depression. Um,
Yeah. So like I would say so I think it'd be more, I guess, postpartum anxiety. So PPA, like they kind
okay.
of go hand in hand. And like thankfully, since I already had a therapist that I trusted, I like knew I'd been like they ask you what your when you after you give birth, you have to go in for a 6-week follow-up appointment and you're
Mhm,
like sleep deprived, you have a newborn, you're like whatever. So they'll ask you this like panel of questions to see if you fall into specifically PPD, like postpartum
mhm,
depression or PPA category.
mhm.
And I didn't like fall into it like by the criteria, but I was like still nervous, like I felt like my anxiety was like especially heightened. So like I started going back to see my therapist more regularly because I didn't see her for like a while, after giving birth and such. And so but yeah, I would say that it definitely was a lot of things were so triggering as a new mom in the
Mhm.
pandemic and like all these things. So I
Mm.
couldn't have the family support system there that initially that we would have had if it hadn't been in like COVID times and things like that. So definitely added to like the anxiety being like heightened, I think, and like triggered during that time.
So what did you do to like cope with that? Besides like
So
therapy, do you have any other strategies?
yeah, so definitely I would say reach out to like if you can reach out to like young moms or friends, anyone you feel close with. So I do feel fortunate. I had like 3 or 4 close like mom friends that I knew who
Mhm.
had kids and they were just like, they were able to give me advice. I'd be like, I'm feeling like this, or like you're totally normal, like what you're doing is fine. So just finding support in any way is huge. It doesn't have to be family. And sometimes it's even more helpful because our mothers, which are amazing, and I love my mom, but like they had kids like 40 years ago, and
Yeah,
things are a little different now.
of
And
course.
sometimes their opinions, even though they're trying to be helpful, it can be to make things a little more challenging.
Oh yeah, and also I just feel like the world then when they had kids versus now it's just like a
Yeah.
completely different world. Like
Yeah.
100%. Like they were raising us. Wait, what year were you born?
I was born in 86.
Okay, so you're the millennial.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
like at the end of the spectrum of I don't know what I am.
What year were
Uh
you born?
95.
Oh, okay.
So it's like that year where it's like I don't know if I'm a Gen Zer or a millennial.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm both, kind of, in a
You're like
way.
on the cusp. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, during those times, I mean, did they have the internet then? When was the internet a history
Internet like
lesson now?
started coming about when I was like in middle school. So
I'm
yeah,
like,
there was no real internet like when I
didn't
was
you,
like
weren't
definitely
you like
not
a
from like my
teacher?
parents.
Are you still a teacher?
Me?
Yeah.
I work actually I'm teaching part-time. So after my daughter was born, it was financially it didn't make sense for me to go back to work full time because
Yeah.
daycare is so expensive. So I
Yeah.
didn't do any work for a year. Then when my daughter was a year, I started to go back to work part-time. So I've been working on Saturdays since January.
So I was gonna say, hey, teacher, okay, let's do a history lesson here. What was the internet invented? Did you
It
teach any
definitely was
history?
like to the mass public, it came out like that was more like in the 90s and things when it started popping up.
Okay, so they didn't have like the internet at all.
No.
And the internet is like very big these days.
Yes.
Like you have it in your pocket. We're on the internet right now to connect. There's blogs, there's podcasts, there's TikTok. So,
I know.
it's just
It's almost, it's a double-edged sword. So I think that's
mhm.
something with my anxiety I've learned with my therapist too. It's so easy for us, like for me, like for those of us who have anxious, being in the unknown or the I don't know category is like
Mhm.
our worst nightmare. Like we want answers, like we want to know, even if it's going to be bad, we just want to know. We want
Yeah,
clear cut, like cut and dry. And so if when you're a new mom, you don't know things, like you first
right.
thing you pop on Google, which can be like your undoing because you will go down this rabbit hole of like 15 different websites give you 14 different answers and it can be very hard to like sift through and kind of like trigger the overwhelm because you're like there's so much information I don't even know how to handle all of this.
Last weekend I interviewed my former boss about motherhood.
Hmm.
And she had really good advice where she was just like saying, if you can look up so many things on the internet, but there's no like right or wrong way. Like everyone does things differently
Yes,
depending on the
totally.
situation. So it's and also I've been like following like these. I love family TikTokers and mother stuff. I'm that guy's. It's so weird because I'm not even a mother, but I just find it so fascinating. I find it entertaining.
Our lives are entertaining, that's for sure.
Uh, I don't know. I just think it's I don't know. I think I'm just so interested to like see cool I mean, because eventually I do want to be mother. I guess it's kind of like my way of like learning before it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I was a nanny in college for a handful of years, and I feel
Hmm.
like that's like the best preparation I could have done. But the kids
Oh
were
yeah.
like 18, like 2 years old and older. So I'm like, let's get the
Okay.
2-year-old. I'm set. But like the first 2 years, I was like, I had no idea what's going on.
Oh yeah, no, sure. I had a 3-year-old for those 2 weeks. So she was two for like a second, and then she turned three the
Oh my
same
God.
week. So I was like,
They're rough.
oh yeah, and I also had like I think he was 6. Yeah, I think he was 6. I know.
A lot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about you mentioned you had a thyroid issue. You had Graves' disease. Can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
explain what that is?
So I knew I had like, I went through IVF to get pregnant. And so when you go through IVF, you do a ton of blood work testing like early on.
What's that?
And so, sorry.
IVF?
Oh
IVF?
yeah. So I did like introvert, like, so I had like, fertility struggles to get pregnant.
Oh,
So
okay.
I went through IVF,
Okay.
for me to get pregnant.
Gotcha.
And so again, another thing to add a level of
Yeah,
anxiety.
I just didn't know what that was. I was like, wait, what's
Oh, I'm
that?
sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
you're
so
good.
funny.
You're fine.
Um, and so they did blood work, and actually I found out my thyroid was on like the lower side. So like hypothyroid just means your thyroid is kind of sluggish a little bit. And so when you're pregnant, your thyroid is like super important because it's like for all the hormone production. So
Mhm.
they just want to make sure it's in the normal range. So I got monitored a little bit, but I never needed medication. Everything was fine.
Mhm.
And then after I gave birth, I was fine for a while. And then about 7 or 8 months postpartum, I'm still waking up every 3 hours to like nurse my daughter to sleep. And I go to lie down, and all of a sudden my heart rate kind of like spikes. It like speeds up as I'm lying down, which is weird. Normally when you
Mhm,
lie
yeah.
down, your heart rate should slow down. And it got up to like, I have like we're like a Fitbit. It got up to over like 100. And
Hmm.
so the next day I like went to like a general doctor, got blood work done, came back that I had hyperthyroid, so not being slow this time, it was like very fast, which is
Hmm.
so basically I talked to my doctor, and it turned out when you're after you give birth, you can trigger an autoimmune response where you basically can kick into overdrive. So I have Graves' disease, which is autoimmune, because if you have the gene for it to be slow, I guess it can
Hmm.
also be high. It can go like kind of go either way on the spectrum if you think about it that way.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, and the reason I was like, I didn't understand at first because, like, wait a minute, I thought it was on the slow. How could it be high? He's like, well, when
Yeah.
you're pregnant, your body suppresses immune responses because it doesn't want to attack the baby. It wants like to
Uh,
protect the baby. So
uh-huh.
everything is being suppressed, and then like when you
Uh-huh.
give birth, it kind of can slingshot back in the other direction, which is like why I guess they
It's
see
kind
a
of like if it
lot
was like
of.
holding it in or
Yeah, yeah, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's like the baby's out, and so then it like overcompensates. And so I got put on anti-thyroid medication to bring it back to the normal range, which I've been in for a while, and been on anti-thyroid meds for like 10 months now, which was fine. Like initially I was very nervous because I'm nursing and breastfeeding, and anything
yeah.
that I consume can go into the breast milk. And so I had to
Yeah.
make sure I had to clear it. I cleared with a pediatrician. We looked everything up, and it was like, yes, it's fine. You're in like the amount that would go in there would not be harmful to like the baby. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But what more scared me is they like, okay, we want you to take some type of heart medication to slow your heart rate because being in that 100 range is like dangerous because that's where
Yeah.
like, and I was like, well, and then so I started reading about it. And so again, can I take it while I'm nursing? And then I had read some blog or something, some opinion, and somebody was like, oh, you have to be very careful because your body can get used to it. It can be really hard to get off the medications. Then I was like, do I really need to take the meds? I really don't
Yeah.
like taking medication unless I have
Yeah.
to. My doctor's like, you have to take it. So I took it for about a week, and
Uh-huh.
then my symptoms completely went away. And in that time frame, that's when I started actually taking CBD
Uh-huh.
to help like calm me down a little bit. And after a week, my heart rate, like the issue completely resolved. I haven't had any symptoms since.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
like a really interesting story and like amazing that CBD was there for you. It's
Yeah,
also
it's so
really
funny. So, the
no.
reason we even had CBD in the house is that I started repping for a company because my husband was taking it to help with sleep. So, like, it's very
Mhm.
common. Like, a lot of people take it if you're like an anxious person, you get wound up at night. So, in order to calm your mind, like CBD can help people sleep. And so, we had it
Mhm.
in the house. We had some broad spectrum, meaning we had ones with no THC in it, which
Mhm.
I had done my research. I talked to people, and the doctors are like, "Yeah, as long as there's no THC in it, like
Mhm.
totally fine to take CBD while you're breastfeeding." I was like, "Okay."
Oh,
So
that's
then,
interesting.
yeah, so it's and there's a whole body of research that thinks now that trace amounts of THC probably aren't an issue either, but that's like it's a
Mhm.
personal preference.
THC is a really just because like THC a certain amount I know like that can typically get you high.
Yeah, you have to take quite a bit. So the amounts that are in like at least so if you buy CBD off the shelf in like the
Mhm.
US, it can
Yeah.
only have 0.3% THC.
Mhm.
So it has to be non-intoxicating, like it can't get too high.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you go
yeah.
to a if you go to a dispensary and you
Uh-huh.
like buy like one of their products, the THC is going to be like 15 to 20%. So like 0.3% versus like 20%.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the doctor's like, no THC, that's fine. And then I was blown away within like I was just like feeling calmer. And it was like, as you know, if you're an anxious person, another thing of being anxious, it speeds up your heart rate. So obviously you want to be calm, like
Yeah.
collected to help
Yeah.
reduce anxiety.
Of course. Do you take CBD every day?
I do. I do. I take it every day. And I just because I take it every day, I feel like it helps keep me at like I don't want to say like an even keel, but it just helps me feel like I don't get triggered. I don't feel as like
Mm.
overwhelmed. Like things will still happen that I'll be like, oh, I feel like almost like I could be getting anxious, but instead I'm just able to handle it better. Like I
I
don't
was
feel
literally
myself
just
stuck.
gonna say that. It's like you feel more collected and you feel like you can handle it. And like
Yes.
you're not gonna be like triggered as easily if you weren't having CBD.
Exactly. It's just like I feel like yeah, I'll get anxious, but I come back to normal very quickly.
Hmm.
And I just, yeah, I would just say like, I feel like you have almost like a pause button that like before you react. It's like, I'm like, oh, like that should be bothering me, but I'm really, it's okay. Like, it's okay.
I love that where it's like, oh, you think that would piss me off, but then it's not. I'm like, I like this. The amount of productivity I can do now. So I don't have to spend my time like fighting my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
how do you consume it?
So I consume it two ways. I use a tincture, which is an oil. So I put it
Mhm.
like under my tongue. But you can also put the oil in like whatever you want. I actually was at a summit for the CBD company I rep for over this past weekend, and there was a
Mhm.
cannabis medicine doctor there who informed us, which I find so cool. You can put it in like any type of oil and like it'll be absorbed great. So like avocado, peanut butter, Nutella, you could like mix it and then eat it.
Wow, that's dope.
Yeah, so like some brands or some company, like they don't like the taste. If you want to get it in your system, it takes a little longer to metabolize, so it has to go through your liver, because you're eating it. But it last it'll have longer lasting effects up to like 6 hours. So I'm like, that's cool. I've the older I switched CBD companies recently, but the older
Oh,
company I went to, I used to like use it in like a jelly form, so like an edible, I guess you could think of, like
okay.
like the gummies. But I find that the oils are better for me for like longevity. And since I'm not looking at like a trigger response, like I
Mhm.
take it like in the morning a little bit and take a little bit like at night,
Yeah, it's nice. You know what I used to take? I used to have a CBD oil.
Yeah.
And what I used to do is put it in my coffee in the morning.
Yeah, it's so funny. Originally, I thought it wasn't as effective. So I was like, because it's an oil and oil and waters. I'm like, that doesn't mix. It won't be absorbed as well. But I learned recently, I've gone through like a bunch of new education and trainings at the new company I'm with. And they're like, you know what? There is a slight difference, but like it's minuscule. So you're still going to feel the effects. Like
Oh, I
if
did.
you don't like it, don't want to hold it on your tongue, just drink it. It's fine.
Yeah, no, I did that and I was like, this is an amazing like morning routine putting CBD in your coffee. And I just felt so calm and collected in the morning.
Yeah.
And usually I feel like I'm more anxious like in the morning.
Yeah.
But then I ran out and I was so sad. I was like,
I know.
no.
I know. We also have CBD chocolate that the company I'm with now. So sometimes we'll have a square of that in the afternoon. And then,
Oh,
like there's
that's
some people that drop it in their coffee in the morning, make a mocha. And I was like, well, that's genius.
you can literally do anything with it, I
You
feel like.
can.
It just honestly, and it's just like such a beautiful way of like coping and healing with mental
Yeah.
health and such. I just like love it so much. And apparently it's good for like I asked my glaucoma specialist and I was like, "Oh, how do you feel about like CBD and stuff?" And they were like, "Well, it could do nothing but help you. Like it wouldn't hurt you." I'm like, "Good, good to know," because I've been using
And
CBD.
And you know what's great too is like 5 or 6 years ago, doctors would not have been on board a lot of the time. You would tell
Mm-hmm.
them and they would be like, oh, like don't like I don't know, like they're not allowed to say anything now. Like I brought the ingredients list to the pediatrician. She's like, oh yeah, it's fine. I asked my endocrinologist, I'm like, will this interact with my thyroid meds? He's like, nothing as far. He's like, I would just like take them an hour apart just in case. I was like, okay, cool. So it's like it's everywhere now.
Yeah, there's
I'm
really
so
no
glad.
like research out there, anything that's going to be like, oh, CBD is horrible for you. I mean, everybody has a different body, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm sure maybe if you do Google, oh, CBD bad, like using those words, like I'm sure something would come up from some
And there are,
person.
and if you are someone who takes like medications, you should always like check with your doctor.
Yeah.
There are certain ones, like I think it's like blood thinners and things like that, where
Yeah.
because the way it's metabolized or whatever, but like but in general, like it's so
If you're
helpful to like
yeah.
so many people. It's really amazing.
And if you're like a healthy adult, then it's like a
Yes,
no-brainer.
absolutely.
But yeah, no, this I have these like good night CBD gummies that my client
Yeah,
sells, and oh my gosh, the rave that it gets and the hype, because it's so good, it literally knocks you out.
that's awesome.
It has melatonin and CBD in the gummy.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's literally the most amazing thing ever. Have you ever heard of Cryberry CBD wine?
Not until you mentioned it to me. It was like brand
Why
new.
don't but yeah, no, I'm like super excited to try the wine that they sent me. But like I think it's this I think it's also great for people who are recovering alcoholics.
Yes. So I know I haven't drank alcohol in 2 years
Oh, it's
because
been 2 years, really?
yeah, it's crazy. And
Oh
it
wow.
started out as I was trying to get pregnant, so I didn't drink. Then I was
Yeah.
pregnant. Then I was
Mm-hmm.
nursing, and then
Mm-hmm.
it became, yeah, I could drink it. I could wait a couple hours, and then I just don't miss it. So I was like, well, if I don't miss it, I'm not going to do it, and not have to deal with the hangover.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting. Other people I've talked to that also take CBD, they found they're drinking less. I mean, I'm like, that's not to say like if you have a glass of wine, you have a cocktail
Yeah, yeah.
for it. But for some people who are using it, it's more of like a crutch. Like they
Mm-hmm.
aren't leaning on it as much, which is pretty cool.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in reality, a lot of people who drink to like relieve their reality
Yes.
with the
Yeah.
world, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's someone who's like a heavy drinker or goes out and party, go out to bars, whatever, and they tell me they're just drinking just for fun, just to be social, I'm like, you're BSing me. I would
Yeah.
probably say
It's
that.
like the being social is because we don't feel comfortable being in a social environment without it.
Right. Right. But I feel like CBD can also, I mean, depending on the person, like, I mean, it helps calm anxiety. Like, I feel like pretty much all
Mhm.
different types of anxiety just help with the nervous system. Are you familiar? I've been mentioning this like literally in every single episode. It just like for some reason just always goes with the conversation. But have you ever heard of Kava?
Yes.
Ah, nice. I feel like not many people know what that is. But also like I feel like if you're really big on CBD and like plant medicine, I feel like
Mhm.
it maybe have that name or something has come into your life. So before we go into it, what would you because somebody do ask people what they know what kava is, but then they kind of get mixed up with something completely different.
All right, I want to see if it's the same thing. So when we were
Okay.
in Fiji for our
Okay. So
honeymoon,
far we're going the right direction.
okay,
Okay.
we drank like they drink it, like they
Yeah, it's like a shell
yes,
thing.
and you
Oh,
drink
okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, you drink it. Okay, now you don't put it on your head, you drink it.
No, no, you drink it's like it's a very bizarre taste if I remember correctly. It was a while. It was
Yeah.
about 8 years ago. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember.
I don't really like the taste. I have to put like coconut milk in it or something. If I
Yeah.
was drinking like it like straight. But like my boyfriend, he works at this place called Botanical Brewing in Florida, and like they're like a tap room that sells kava, CBD, THC, all that. And it's
Okay.
literally like a bar with no alcohol and it's like those products.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they have like different sparkling drinks for the with it. They have mixed drinks and things like that. And it's so and it's just the whole vibe. It's
And I
nice
think
too.
we're reaching, so I was at the summit this past weekend and the doctor's saying, I think we're reaching a tipping point where there's a ton of people that they want an alternative to alcohol. Like they've
Hmm.
either drank too much or they witnessed too much, whatever the reason, and people are looking for all an alternative. And so it's good, like, so looking at like a lot of like low dose THC products are coming out now too. Like the company with we're just releasing one like so people can have something where they have this calm like a calming relaxed
Hmm.
without that hangover
Hmm.
without and with just more controlled. Like when you order a drink
Yes.
at a bar, you don't really know how much alcohol is going in
True.
versus if you're like taking a product like whatever like kava or whatever, usually like you're measuring, so there's more like measurement involved and you can
Yeah. And also there's no hangovers for
yes,
kava and kava doesn't make you angry like you're gonna have a bar fight, you know what I mean?
exactly,
So
exactly.
it just so much the vibes are so much better. And then there was this one girl on TikTok. It was like the most iconic thing ever. She would go to a bar, order a mocktail, and then she would just put her CBD oil in it.
Yeah, so we did this past weekend. We had these amazing non-alcoholic mocktails. I was like, they're so delicious, and there's no alcohol in them, and it's like they're spirits. It's like they're it's amazing how far we've come, and I'm so happy to see that. It's like I feel the real societal pressure to drink for a long time is like pretty
Mm.
strong, and if you don't, you get this like a grill of questioning, but why? And it's like, but
Oh,
then
that's
why
so
do you
rude.
care that I'm not drinking is really the question.
That is so rude. People really need to learn to just like shut up. Like,
Yeah.
that stuff bothers me, and I'm like, if you have to deal with that, I'm sorry you have to deal with that because that's so annoying.
Yeah, and another mom I know, she's also like nursing like postpartum, and she's like, she's been trying to cut back on drinking because like she doesn't drink that often. She's like, when I do, and there's a social environment, it's like, and then I always hate it the next day. I'm like, I know. I'm like, once you start, it gets easier, but it's a hard thing. Like the societal pressures, even if it's not a pressure of them like being direct, but you can like feel the feel the
Yeah, it's like the
you know.
energy. It's also kind of
Yes.
like feeling like a little like left out in a way because everyone's like it's also like if you go to a party and everyone's drunk and you're just like nah, and it's just like
I know.
you know and I lately I've been ever since I've been introduced to kava CBD I've been really like I really don't care to drink. I mean
Yeah.
like I still do have wine here and there but I'm not
Yeah.
the kind of person where I want to be having like tequila shots and so I don't even know the last time I even had a tequila shot. So
Yeah.
it's also like kind of rough when you're like because I was when I was in New Jersey I was at a bachelorette.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to a bachelorette. This is gonna be really hard if I like want to be like, I don't want to drink.
I know.
So it's kind of like, okay, what do I do? You know? But well, so I mean, I did drink that week, and I just for that just for that weekend. But typically, I try not to make it like an everyday kind of thing. Like at one point, I was kind of doing that like every day when I was doing like One Hope and everything because I just had so much wine in my apartment.
Yeah, no,
So
and it's such a normal thing, like go to happy hour after work. And it's like
yeah,
all those, and if you're not partaking in it, you can feel very isolated. And
yes, that's what
which
it
then can
is.
feed into your anxiety, depression, whatever, even further, even though there's all these issues with that alcohol exacerbates. Like
Oh,
it's
if you
it's a
ever
challenge.
come to Florida, oh my gosh, if let's say, well, I'm in Cape Coral right now, and that's like where the Botanical Brewing is, but there's a couple of spots in Florida. I mean, we should go to go to that tap room and have some like kava together. I just feel like it'll be like that environment is just so much, I don't know, like funner.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and just like it's like just think about like alcohol is like a depressant on your body,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
just the way it impacts it, you just don't know. It can, yeah, like you said, like so much anger, like don't drive it, like all the
Yeah.
horrible things
And then
that come
also, car accidents.
Yes.
So I feel like I feel like we're literally at the beginning before a movement's gonna happen.
I agree. I definitely agree.
How amazing is that? I feel so blessed.
yeah, I'm glad that like, I don't know. I'm glad that like I'm glad a shift is finally happening. I'm glad that plant medicine is like more openly accepted and
Yes.
like even like within family, it's like I know my mom, my dad is taking like every, it's just like people are just open to trying something a little different and just feeling more like people just want to feel calm and like balance. Like they don't want to feel like those extremes anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like there's really needs to be more information or more people really trying to push for that
Hmm.
because and like the amount of harm that alcohol causes on society, domestic violence, we can literally name a million things. Domestic violence, child abuse, car accidents, people going to jail for probably hitting somebody at a bar, like fights, marriages breaking up. Like I can go on and on with
I know,
alcohol.
I
And
know.
I'm like literally thinking of like this right now. I'm like, shit. Wow. Who the heck made alcohol legal?
I know. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
a whole thing about like, why like plants and stuff were made illegal and all that, but I'm glad that we're slowly getting our way back.
Right? Slowly. Yeah. And then
Slowly.
also the amount of money people can save.
Oh, I know. I know. I'm like, we rarely like my husband will buy like a six pack of beer every once in a while. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm like how much money we used to spend at restaurants. Like,
Yes. Drinks are getting more expensive these days. They're like $13 drinks here and stuff like that. Like I went to a tap room maybe 2 weeks ago and they sold, it was interesting, they had two bars, one bar sold beer, one bar sold like CBD and THC and stuff.
oh wow.
Very interesting. So
Yeah.
I went to the CBD bar because I was like, I want it, and I was like, oh, I'll get this drink. And then the girl, like, she put the seltzer and she put like whatever, she just made the drink, she gave it to me, and she might be 350. I was like, huh? I was expecting like $8, $10.
Right.
Like I was like, excuse me. Well, I didn't say that. I was like, I'm not gonna say
You're like,
it.
okay, 350.
But I
Yeah,
was
you
like,
got it.
oh my God, imagine going to, and that CBD drink made me feel good. I had two of them. They were nice. I didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna go like start jumping off things. Like I just felt like nice and relaxed. So I'm
Right.
like, I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm in the 19s, like 60s right now or something, like getting a drink at a bar for like $3. Like what? And then so like when the tip part came, it was like 75 cents. And I was like, I kind of felt bad. I was like, I clicked 20% too on the thing. Then
That's
automatically, I was like, yeah,
crazy.
20%. Like I automatically just because she was really nice. And I just realized after I clicked it and signed and I sent over, I was like, wait, did I just go 75 cents?
It's just it's remarkable, it really is.
I was like, oh my God, I feel like an asshole. But it's like, I'm sure she gets it, like it's not like I like did the math myself and put it on like a paper. Like it was on like one of those screens.
Yeah. It like did it for you.
Yeah. So I was like, but then I just realized after I already clicked the button, I was like, oh my God, I just gave this girl like a 70%. Oh my God. But yeah, no, I thought that was really cool and I would totally go back. But it's like we need more of that.
Yeah.
Oh
No,
my
it just
goodness.
I just like I said, I think there's a real push for people like not wanting to like lose their like cognition and like their faculties, right? They just want to feel calm. Like that's it. We just want to feel calm. We want to feel like relaxed.
Social
Yeah, that's it.
content,
Exactly.
and just kind of be like, everybody goes through something. Everyone's always going through something. So it's just like people instead of like drinking wine at the end of the night or drinking like a beer, it's like have like a kava drink or something like that. And it's also
Totally.
it boosts my creativity. At one
That's
point, I
awesome.
was drinking like these like CBD seltzers, and
Yes, which like those are new too, which is awesome.
yeah, and then every time I'll drink it, I'll like, oh my God, I have a creative idea now. Like it would like remove the brain fog.
That's yeah, no, it's really like our endocannabinoid system, which is
Mhm.
like we have a system in our bodies set up for CBD, which makes it so cool. It's just
Oh
like
yeah,
it's like waiting to be fed this CBD molecule. So when you give it to it, it's like all these little like so if you're like out of whack because your mood, that
Mhm.
gets balanced. If it's like the fog in your brain, that gets balanced. If sleep is off, that gets balanced. So it's like rebalancing your systems. It's like so freaking cool.
That is really cool. Oh my goodness, I feel like more people need to. I feel like this movie needs to like hurry up before I'm
I
dead.
know.
Oh my goodness. Well, I really hope, like, a lot of people think the world's ending. I'm just feeling like I think the world's not, I mean, the toxic world hopefully is ending. I mean, right now the world's a very interesting, but the world's always an interesting place. But I feel like now we're going a little philosophical. Okay, all right. So, what else do you do to cope with your stresses of motherhood outside of using CBD?
So absolutely is number one is like getting out of the house. Like fresh air is
Mm-hmm.
like a must. I go on a walk every single day. So like exercise, like movement in general is important, but I think the fresh air is like absolutely necessary. And then change of scenery. So like it's very easy to be like overwhelmed, like feeling like you're like this, like on the rat race, like doing the same thing like every day, like over and over, especially when you have like a very small child. So if you can get out and change scenery, go to a park, go to like libraries have like free events all the time. They'll have like story times and things like that. Moms groups on Facebook are actually really helpful. Like I'm in a group where like somebody like sets up a calendar, like different people host things all the time and it's free.
Oh, that's
So
so cool.
like find your tribe of people, like
Yeah.
and like just know you're not by yourself. Like whatever you're going through, there's like 10 other moms going through the same shit you are.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so I say like just try to find somebody and get out of your house is what I would say.
Oh my gosh, for real. I actually like recommended this one mom to like go into do like Facebook group because what a great thing could also do? Like this was just my thought when I recommended it to her was like you're obviously gonna make friends with other moms and maybe even develop relationships where because a lot of moms may have like a hard time who may have to work full time, like both the mom and the
Yeah,
dad, and may have a hard time finding someone to watch the kid for X amount of hours, maybe like even a couple of hours or something like that.
right,
Or they may not have like the kind of family support. Like that happens,
right.
and I see that. So I feel for those moms, and I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. Like they don't really have like that really good of a support system. So I said to this one person, I was like, oh, if you're doing like a Facebook group that are like for moms in your
Mhm.
area, like type in your like county
Yes,
or your town
absolutely.
and put like mom group. And like
Hmm.
that is a beautiful way to connect. And I'm not saying throw your kid to a random stranger. Obviously, talk to that person and actually gain a relationship, but that's like a start. You know what I mean?
No, it's just yeah, like literally that's what so like the few mom friends I have aren't local to me and they're like go on Facebook, find your local like your in your put in your town and be like
Yeah.
mom groups and there's like
Yeah.
five of or six there's like so many of them
Of
and then
course.
just and it's full of information of seasoned moms with new kids who find kids your age or
Ah,
people do like same activities you do. It just helps because the hardest part of motherhood is like the feeling of isolation. And so that's what
yeah.
fuels anything, anxiety, depression, all that stuff. So like if you can just be with others, it just really helps.
Didn't we actually meet a Facebook group? You and I?
It was the event, right? It was an online like no, like
I
it was
think
an
that the one
online
that Pia threw.
yeah, the Pia's event.
So that's so funny how we actually met in a Facebook group and look where we are now.
That's true. That's so true.
Wow, we just reached first full circle. We're
There
like
we
now
go.
we're recommending people to join Facebook groups. I love Facebook groups.
You know what? I like the groups. Facebook itself, I feel very triggered and like, it's like all the
Mm,
news and all this stuff, but it's like I will jump into those
yeah.
groups for connections. They're still pretty powerful.
Yeah, I don't really scroll on my feed on Facebook too much just
Yeah,
because
me
it's
neither.
always like political or like something that I'm just probably would annoy me, if you know what I
Yes,
mean.
I agree.
So if I am on Facebook scrolling, it's like maybe for like 30 seconds.
I know. I know. It's more like, did I miss any major announcement from
Yeah,
some
something like
cousin
that.
maybe that I should be
Yeah.
aware of?
No, yeah, it's like exactly like for that. But oh my God, I was like on Facebook like a crap ton before, when we're doing all of the events and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like I found my home on Instagram much more. I just
Yeah, I even know she's been on. I noticed I think it's the algorithm. Okay,
yeah.
I don't think I know. Because I literally never see your stuff unless I click like how you can switch your feed to like following to like regular feed.
Yes.
I
Yes.
only see your content when I click following.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so I mean, what tech I literally never see your stuff. So like what type of content do you post on the regular? Like the type like topic wise.
So my like my reels and like my static posts and things like that. It's like anxious mom tips. I do things like that. How
Uh,
to's for CBD. Like I feel like it's like my big one, like how to manage anxiety, things like
Maybe
that.
because I'm not a mom that I don't see like mom
Maybe
topics.
there's some mom
It could,
hashtags of plant medicine, like plant wellness, all that kind of stuff is in there
yeah,
too.
I feel like that could be why because I don't like on Instagram, I don't get fed that content because I'm not normally like looking for mom bloggers. I feel like the more the mom stuff that I see is like on TikTok.
Yeah.
Just
And
like
you
the
know, the
family
algorithm's
blog.
so funny too. It's like I feel like I started seeing your stuff only because I like had scrolled all the way over my stories recently and I was like, I have not seen Justine stuff in a long time. And then once I started engaging on your content, then I finally started seeing it
That's
again.
how it works. Yeah. And then if you like start talking in the DMs, that's another way to trigger the algorithm to show me
Yeah.
more. It's creating conversations and direct messages.
Exactly. And so it's like I try sometimes I'm like, wait, how haven't I talked to certain people in a while? And I'm like, let me
I
find them on my
know.
stupid
Sometimes
thing.
I'm just like I think in my head, I'm like, oh crap, what is this person doing with their life? I would think like, oh, maybe I get sometimes I'll get nervous and I'll be like, something happened to them, and I'll. Hey, listener, if you have come this far into the podcast episode, I hope that you are enjoying it. And also, I would love if you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, if you can leave a review. It helps so much in the algorithm to get our podcast pushed to new listeners. And if you're on Spotify, if you can follow us on there, that would be truly amazing. And the more you guys share, the more that we grow in this podcast. And the more we grow, the more episodes we can put out for you guys. So, yes, thank you so much for listening. And now back to the episode. From your knowledge, do you think CBD can be a good fit for all bodies, or do you believe only certain do you believe certain people should stay away from it?
It's pretty much for everybody, unless you have certain like pre-existing like medical conditions. I'd say like if you're on any type of medication, you always want to like check with your doctor first just to make
Yeah.
sure there's no known interactions because CBD works gets broken down in your liver. That's where medicines get broken down. So you just want to make sure there's nothing where it could interact. And sometimes it's just spacing it out. Like you can still take them, but maybe you take your medication in the morning, you take your CBD at night. And it's because everybody has an endocannabinoid system. So if you have which runs through like your spine and your body. So if you have a spine, so like mammal, like basically my dog takes CBD, my husband, me, like everyone can benefit in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
And there's so many ways that you can take it, like we talked about before. So everyone can really reap the benefits.
So, what would you say to somebody who may be nervous to take it for the first time? Like, how would you explain your first experience?
I would say, well, you want to start low and slow with whatever you're taking,
Yeah,
because you
true.
don't know how your body's going to react, just like a medication, right? Like, or a supplement, you would start with a small amount and then build gradually over time.
Mm.
And don't go in it thinking you're going to have, it's almost like it doesn't make you feel a certain way. It just all of a sudden you have an absence of something. So, for example, if you're feeling anxious, it doesn't make me feel like a happy emotion or like something. I just know that I'm less anxious or like
Yeah.
I'm less triggered and like I get less sucked into the overwhelm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. 'Cause I know some people, if they are already anxious, some people are scared to take new things into their body.
Yeah.
But there's really like I don't think there's really much out there or known of like things like, oh, this person had a bad reaction to this, or I mean THC they have bad
Yeah,
reactions, but
I mean, the most important thing too is when you're picking a CBD, like make sure that there's a certificate of analysis. So on every
mm,
product you buy, there should be a barcode on like the packaging, so you can
hmm
like find out what's actually in your product because CBD is an unregulated industry, unfortunately. So somebody could like slap a label and be like, "Hey, it says CBD in it," but
hmm
it could have other parts of the plant. So, and something else that's really important, you'll find in that COA, which will be on their website too. They'll test for certain things. They'll test for like leads, pesticides, like all that nasty stuff because hemp is like a scavenger plant. It will literally suck up what's ever in the environment. So
hmm
if it's planted in an area where those things are floating around, it'll take it up. And then when they extract it to put in your product, you'll ingest it, which is not good. But as long as you do your research, you make sure they have those things, then like, yeah, I mean, CBD really is for everyone.
Yeah, you're definitely very knowledgeable about that. I feel like I was talking to a scientist for like a hot minute.
Well, I do have a master's in biology, but
Oh, I read. You told me about that you are really big on biology. So that stuff is like second nature to you, no pun
It's
intended.
so funny. When I got involved, I felt like it was kind of like all my worlds coming together. Like I love helping people. Like I have a passion for that. So I
Ah.
was a teacher and educator. I love science. It's like there's such a big science background and research with this. And it was like it all clicked together. And I was like, this is the best thing ever.
That is amazing. So what else do you do for like spreading? You post reels? Do you post on Facebook too, or?
I don't post static on Facebook just because of the types of people that like families that follow me there. It just gets a
Mhm.
little hairy sometimes.
Ah, gotcha.
So I post, yes, I post reels, I post static posts on Instagram. I'm in my stories all the time.
Yeah.
I just started generating like an email list. So then like people who
Oh,
want,
very
I
cool.
have
Oh
like
my
email like
gosh.
newsletters and tips and all that fun stuff.
Oh, I want to join it. You send me the link.
Yeah, I definitely
I
will.
didn't. I see. The algorithm is insane because I had all this stuff you're telling me. I follow you on everything, and I'm already. I was like, "Well, you do this." It's like
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
it's so insane. Do you what do you think about doing TikTok? Because TikTok definitely you have like actually no way. It's hard on TikTok. CBD.
TikTok is tricky. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah. I
they have you can't say the word
you
CBD. You have
can't.
to
Yeah.
be
No, I
like
know. I don't know why I even asked you that question
no, but
because
you know what's weird?
yeah.
Some people don't get flagged. They do stuff and they're fine, and other
Yeah.
people do it and they get flagged, and it's just like it's so weird.
Yeah, no, because my client when he's they sell the CBD and THC, so we don't like we have a TikTok, but every time I post something, it gets taken down right away, even if I don't even like say it in there. Like it's just it's I don't get it.
It's so weird.
So yeah, I mean Instagram is definitely more accepting to the CBD community. They're definitely not accepting the
Yeah,
THC.
and Facebook blocks certain things. Not
Yeah.
CBD is okay, but if you say THC, even if you like are saying like low, it like sometimes will flag it. So it's like Instagram is very CBD friendly.
Yeah.
I know people that I think started branching out to you like YouTubes and stuff.
Yeah, I was just gonna say YouTube. See, I think the reason I just said TikTok because TikTok is always like people, reach big audiences. But
Yeah.
no, I think YouTube. I was thinking YouTube. Yeah, like YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, so I've
Be
been
like a
hearing
good.
about them. I haven't done them yet, but I've been hearing about them.
Yeah, I was just thinking of just like ways for you to like reach like a larger audience. You
Yeah.
know, you can even like if you have the time, you can even like make like full form videos on just literally niche to CBD and
Yeah.
like start that movement.
I know, right?
Yeah,
We
no,
got to get it
I
going.
subscribe. I subscribe to it.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So last question I have for you, the way I always like close up a conversation is okay, so let's think about the person that's listening to us. Most likely wondering if CBD is for them, could be a mom as well, could be struggling with anxiety. This is a little question, but what's the last piece of advice that you would want to give my audience?
I would say that if you think you like are need help, like get the help. Like don't sit there like thinking like I should just have to deal with this, whatever it is, if it's anxiety, if it's depression or anything, and try something new. The worst that could happen is if you try CBD, then it doesn't work and that's it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no harm, there's not risks like with other like medications. It's not going to do anything like scary to your body. And I would just say it's worth the risk. Like you deserve the chance to like feel better. I know so many people who have like impacted, like it's really just changed their lives for the better. There, some people even give it to their kids. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just powerful. And if you're dealing with anxiety, it can get better. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast. I really appreciate it.
It was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening to this episode and stay tuned for next week's.